Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Nicole Lamberson. I was trained as a physician assistant, and I volunteer doing outreach for the film Medicating Normal and host conversations like this one today. Our guest today is Beata, and I'm going to pronounce it wrong. I'm so sorry. Pawlikowska. She's a writer, traveler. What's that?
Wonderful.
Okay. She's a writer, traveler, journalist, and author of over 100 motivational, travel, culinary, and language books. She developed her own method of learning and teaching foreign languages, and her language books have sold well over 1 million copies. For 16 years, she hosted a weekly radio show called The World According to a Blonde on Poland's second biggest national radio station. And now she continues her podcast work on her YouTube channel. I invited her to come on today because she made a YouTube video sharing the large body of the latest peer-reviewed scientific research that contradicts the mainstream assumptions of psychiatry about the chemical imbalance theory of so-called mental illness. And she was threatened with violence and lawsuits. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us and for sticking with me through this tech nightmare that we've had today.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we're going to start fresh for anybody who wasn't able to hear at all. The first question, I want you to tell us a little bit about your bestseller book. You wrote it about essentially your own experience of healing from addictions and depression and eating disorders. And so tell us a little bit about the book, why you wrote it, and how it was received.
So I wrote that book in 2016, 7 years ago. And that was the time that I was not interested in science at all. I knew nothing about how the brain works or about neurotransmitters or anything like that. So I only knew my own life. And I realized that my transformation is huge, because I used to be the most lonely person on the planet, crying all the time, always unhappy, never finding anything worthy in my life or in myself. And now I consider myself one of the happiest people on the planet. So that's a pretty long way to go. And when I was 16, I noticed that my mind thinks thoughts which are not mine. I didn't want to have them. I did not identify myself with those thoughts, yet they were in me and they controlled my emotions. And if they controlled my emotions, they also controlled my behavior. So I did a lot of stupid things, and I fell into addictions and toxic relationships. And so I was really miserable. And I started to work with my brain, because when I noticed that I have those thoughts, and I was wondering if there's anything that I can do to change them or get rid of them. And then I discovered that the thoughts which I thought were not mine were really rooted very deeply in my subconsciousness, where I had certain beliefs about myself, about life in general, about other people, which had been planted in me when I was a child. So I started to look for ways to change them. At first, I wanted just to get rid of them, but I quickly realized it's not possible, because the brain has to believe in something. So the only way to change it is to rewrite them. I call them codes of subconsciousness. So when we're children, the subconscious mind is working for us, because we're too small to be able to draw conscious decisions about what's around us. So the subconscious mind is making the whole outlook on the world and life based on the personal experiences. So depending on where you are, what kind of parents you have, what kind of television programs you watch, what kind of computer games you play, you will be a different person when you're a grown-up. And if you have never looked into your subconsciousness, you may be 40 years old and you may still believe what your subconsciousness has believed when you were a child. So I believe that as every adult person, every grown-up has the right, the privilege, and the duty to look inside the subconscious brain, the subconscious mind, and verify what they believe in. So this is what I did. And so I decided to write a book about it. And because I healed myself from depression, which I had for over 20 years, and from addictions and from eating disorders, I thought it might be inspiring for someone, and maybe someone could find it helpful. So I wrote that book, and I was sometimes invited to the morning daily shows on television. And on one such occasion, I was in the studio. And of course, they invited not only me, they also invited a psychiatrist, because they invited me not to show my way, but to criticize what I wrote in the book, because people were saying it's a bad book. And because they were saying that it was bad, people wanted to know how bad it is. And so they would buy it to read it, which is great. And so we were in the studio and they asked me to explain how I healed myself from depression. So I started to explain the subconscious mind, what I discovered. And the psychiatrist was very impatient and angry with what I was saying. And finally he interrupted me and he said, "Stop that rubbish. It's dangerous what you're saying. Everybody knows that depression is caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain, and only antidepressant medication can cure depression." Mm-hmm. And that was the last word on the show. So I came back home and I thought, wow, I don't know anything about the chemical imbalance. I don't really know how the brain works. And so I decided to find out. And I started to study neurobiology, neuroscience, and I listened to hundreds of lectures on YouTube. I read books, I read research papers. And then one day, I remember I came across a lecture by Dr. Joanna Moncrief. Mm-hmm. She was explaining the latest knowledge about psychiatric drugs and antidepressants. And she said that psychiatric and the antidepressants do not cure depression. And they are actually psychoactive substances that change the way the brain works. And we don't really know how it changes the brain. We just know that somehow it changes the way we feel. Mm-hmm. They numb emotions. They also have many other side effects, and they cause physical dependence. So it may be difficult to withdraw from taking them. And that being taken long time, they may cause a lot of harm. I remember reading the wonderful book by Robert Whitaker, which really opened my eyes. And I said, why is nobody saying this in Poland? Yeah. And I was so naive thinking that it's not common knowledge in Poland because somebody just missed the latest research. And I thought I would do them a favor bringing this up. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to record a video about the latest research on antidepressants. Yeah. And I became the public enemy.
Yeah. Yeah. Which we'll get into the details of. I'm curious though, the timeline. So you talked about being 16 when you were suffering, and then you were on the morning show when you had written your book. So what was the timeline like? How many years did you suffer? When did you help yourself with your own depression and addictions? And then when did you write the book?
So I was never diagnosed with depression.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy I didn't, because it was in the 70s. I was going to the primary school and I was just crying every morning. I was so unhappy that I was trying to take my life when I was 16. And if I had gone to a psychiatrist or a doctor, and if they had told me that I had depression and I had a broken brain, that I had a chemical imbalance in the brain, that I would have thought, all right, so this is just one more thing that is wrong with me. I'm all broken. My mind is broken. My heart is broken. Like, I'm worthless.
Mm-hmm.
And I would not even think that I might do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm happy that I was not diagnosed with depression. But when I did the Hamilton scale,
Mm-hmm.
which has 52 points, looking back, I was between 33 and 40 points.
Wow.
For about 20 years, thinking about almost every time I would drive my car, I was just looking at the trees and thinking about crashing into the trees. Or whenever I would walk the bridge, I would just in my mind keep jumping off the bridge into the water. And that was a constant theme in my life. So then when I was 20 something, I finally decided to do something that I always dreamt of. But I also thought that I wanted to travel.
Mm-hmm.
But I also thought that traveling is for people who are better than me. I would consider myself worse and worthless, someone who's just standing in the corner, looking at other people being happy and having wonderful life. And then one day I realized that nobody will do it for me. Either I will do it, but it's just never going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to start traveling. And it took me 1.5 years to save enough money to buy my first plane ticket. Mm-hmm. And so I went first to Central America, and then I went to South America, to the jungle, to the Amazon jungle, which is the most dangerous, the most unpredictable, the scariest place you can imagine.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. I mean, it's difficult to explain because when you're there and it's very humid, very hot, millions of mosquitoes and flies that want to suck blood from you.
Yeah.
So it's not pleasant. Mm-hmm. It's really difficult when you have to walk several hours a day, and then there's nowhere to wash yourself if you don't find a river, and you're all sweaty and hot and dirty, and you sleep in a hammock, and it's raining all night. So you wake up in a wet hammock, all wet, hungry, there's no food. So it's not fun. And logically, I shouldn't want to go back. But after the first few weeks, I think it was like 3 months, I came back to Poland. And the only thing I was thinking of was, I want to go back. And I didn't know why, but something was so powerful and attracting me. And I didn't know that actually it would change all of me. It would change my life, because I came back to the Amazon jungle every year for a few weeks. And I've been doing that for the past 30 years. This year, I'm also going back to the jungle in November, like every year. Mm-hmm. And so I met the indigenous people and I lived with them. and they changed my life.
Do you want to tell us a little bit of how, what impact did being there have on, because I think it's amazing that, the way you describe yourself and how miserable you were and how much you suffered, and you managed to avoid mental health and being sort of brainwashed into thinking that you had this chemical imbalance and that you needed medications. And then you came to this place on your own of where you realized that you were having, I guess, like intrusive thoughts that weren't really serving you, and then taught yourself how to reframe everything into the version of yourself that you are today, and then wrote a book about it, trying to share your secrets with everybody else. But like, what happened in that jungle? What did you see or experience that transformed your life in that way?
It's not that I came and somebody explained something to me and I was changed. Mm-hmm. On the contrary, when I first went to the Amazon jungle and I met the indigenous people, I'm embarrassed to admit, but the truth is, I was sorry for them, because I thought, we come from this wonderful civilization. We have money, we have computers, we have politics, we have shops where we can buy food, we have restaurants, we have music, we have cities, we have cars, and I thought they had nothing because they were walking barefoot in the jungle, and for all clothes they only had some leaves and cotton threads. And so I was feeling sorry for them, because I thought, we with our great shoes and lamps and raincoats, we're so much better. And they proved me so wrong, so wrong. And I remember, because I walked through the jungle for many days, and I rode paddled actually, in an indigenous canoe for many days, suffering from hunger, being sick, having no strength to go on, but I did. I was crying because it was so painful. I had some wounds on the legs. So I was crying of pain, but I had to keep on going. But I remember in the beginning, the first year, I think, I remember going with the indigenous people through the jungle, and it was so hard. It was so difficult. And after a few hours, I just sat down on the path and I started to cry. And I said, I'm so tired. I cannot go anymore. And they looked at me and like, they have never seen anything like that. What do you mean you cannot? There is like, we walk until we reach our destination, where we can hang the hammocks and make a little fire and maybe have some food. But they have never experienced someone who was so weak that I just broke down, and I was feeling sorry for myself. And they were so kind to me, and they didn't judge me. They were trying to help me, and they took my backpack and helped me walk. So we did walk. And I remember one day we were walking through the jungle, and it started to rain. And when it rains in the Amazon jungle, it really gets very cold. And the rain is like the flood, like the sky opens and there's this huge wall of water coming down. So we stopped, and I hid under a tree. I was wearing my raincoat, rubber boots, and I was cold. I was shivering. I was so hungry. I was so miserable. And then my two guides also stopped. They put their backpacks on the ground and they went into the jungle. They disappeared. And I thought, what? Not only I'm hungry and tired and unhappy and miserable and alone, now I'm also left alone in the jungle, and they just deserted me. They just ran away. But they came back like 15 minutes later, carrying some wood and carrying palm leaves. So they made a little tiny hut from the leaves, and they knew how to find wood that even when it's wet, you can make fire with it. So they made a little fire, they made a little roof. And so I was standing under the tree, wet and cold and hungry, and they were already sitting in the little hut having fish over the fire. And that was the moment that I realized that they are not poor. They are the richest people on the planet, and they are the wisest people on the planet. And if anyone survives on the earth, it will be them, not us. Because we are taught to live in a very comfortable world. And anywhere you go, there's always a chair where you can sit, because you should not get tired. You should always rest. You should take it easy. And we are being taught, like I was taught in my culture, in my civilization, that life should be easy, should be comfortable and cheap. And when things get complicated, I was always unhappy. Like, why is this happening to me? Why do I have problems that I have to solve? It's unfair. Rather than, because nobody taught me how to solve problems. Nobody told me that every challenge that life brings is actually the greatest lesson you can get, because this is how you generate more power and you learn new things. So that was the first moment that I looked at them and I realized that they actually know more about life, about good life, about happy life than most people in our civilization. Yeah. So, sorry for the long answer, but just to finish and to answer your question, I was brought up to believe that the most important thing is what other people think about me. So I concentrated, without being aware of it, subconsciously, I concentrated on creating an image for other people. So I wanted them to believe that I'm strong, that I'm independent, that I'm courageous, that I'm honest. And when I was in the jungle and when I was walking for hours and days and weeks with the indigenous people, the jungle showed me the truth about me. And the truth was, I was not courageous. I was not strong. I was not honest. I was not anything that I thought I was. And so the greatest lesson I got from the jungle and from the indigenous people, the greatest lesson is that it's not about making other people believe what you are. It's about being. It's about being courageous. It's about being honest. It's about being strong. And this is when this is what you are, then you're a happy human being.
Yeah. So, echoes a lot of sort of what I hear from people who go through withdrawal from psychiatric drugs and have like a super brutal time. You know, I mean, it's not the same thing as being rained on and starving in the Amazon jungle, but it's, you know, terrible, terrible suffering compared to the easy, you know, air-conditioned life that we led before we suffered in that way. And many people say after the suffering ends that it was this great teacher essentially to them. And so
then it also shows you that we don't even appreciate all the wonderful things that we have in life. Because what I also found out while traveling, actually the easiest way to make you appreciate what you have is take it away from you. Take away the washing machine, the vacuum cleaner, the water running in your bathroom and in your kitchen, hot water, hot meals. Take it away for even a few days, for even one day. And you will start appreciating all the wonderful things that you can have such a comfortable life.
Yeah. I'm curious just for my own, you know, listening to your story, which was so fascinating. Did the indigenous people like really embrace you immediately, or did you have to sort of earn your way in?
So, as you can see, blonde, blue eyes, small. And when I would come to the middle of the jungle, hundreds of miles from the nearest city or town, they were so surprised to see me. They would never judge me. They would always be welcoming, always friendly, and always curious about me. They never ask me which country I come from, because they don't know that there are countries in the world. What they think is that the whole world is covered with the jungle. So the only question they would ask me is if in my village there is enough food. And I would say yes, in my village, which is called Polandia, in my village, there is quite some food. Yes. They were surprised to see, because I would wear, Western clothes. So they would come and look under my clothes to see if I was hiding, maybe because their skin is darker than ours. So they were not sure if maybe under the clothes, my skin was similar to theirs. So they would look underneath to see what I'm hiding there, because they were not hiding anything, wearing no clothes.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said that you began to notice too, that they were really free from, what we label as mental illness and even like certain medical conditions and things that we have here.
Oh, yeah. Because the medical conditions that you mentioned, such as cancer, diabetes, obesity, depression, they're called civilization diseases, right? So they are related to what we have created in our Western civilization. And after living with the indigenous people in the Amazon jungle for many weeks, when I started to look at life like they do, and when I looked back at our life in Europe or North America, I was shocked, because before that, I always thought that this is the best of the worlds. And, we even say we are the first world and there are the third world countries, as if they were worse. But actually, it should be exactly the opposite, because the most destructive civilization you can think of is ours.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's free. You cannot be healthy in an unhealthy environment. I travel a lot, and I must tell you, and I'm a big fan of healthy eating. And this is one of the most difficult things while traveling, finding something healthy to eat.
Yeah.
Because in our cities and villages in the Western civilization, you only have junk food everywhere. It's easy. A few days ago, I climbed a small mountain in southwestern Poland. So after a few hours going up the mountain through the forest, you're hungry when you get to the top. Yeah. And the only thing you can get there was French fries and fried sausage, which I never touch. So I didn't.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. It just sort of sounds like your traveling experiences have like totally, reframed your way of thinking and seeing the world, and thus allowed you to look at your own life completely differently. So you've written this book and you're sitting on this morning show, and this psychiatrist man is telling you how ridiculous you are. And I'm curious, did you have a chance to rebut him, or it was just like he was the final word and that was it? You were just sort of left.
Yeah, he was the final word. That was not the only time I was invited to television to talk about the book. I remember on another daily morning show, there was another psychiatrist And so the hosts asked me how I discovered what I'm talking about. And I said, what I told, oh, this is Pablo Picasso. Hi. So I said, when I was 16 and I started to watch my mind, seeing things that I did not identify myself with, and being surprised and thinking how I could change them. And the psychiatrist says, and so I said, so this is how I discovered how my subconsciousness works, and I was able to change it. And the psychiatrist said, phew, scientists knew about it in the 19th century. That's not new. And I thought, wow, me as a 16-year-old girl, without reading any books, without having any scientific knowledge about it, without nothing, just on my own, I discovered the same thing that the scientists in the 19th century discovered. So if this is not an achievement, what is?
Yeah, exactly. And even still, it worked for you. It was just your experience. You weren't up there trying to, like you said, present any scientific information. You had just written a book about your own story and wanted to share it in the event that it would help other people,
I didn't even know that there was the whole science behind it, because I was never interested in it. I hated school. I started to study twice, and I dropped university after 2 months and never came back. I was a passionate learner, but on my own terms. But science and neuroscience, neurobiology was never really my thing. So yeah, I only exclusively wrote about what I lived through and what I discovered on my own.
Yeah. Okay. So now you have been introduced to the so-called chemical imbalance theory, and you do all this research, and you're, digging around, trying to find studies, and you come across all of this stuff, Joanna Moncrief, Bob Whitaker's book, and you're educating yourself. How long did you study and sort of read and prepare before you made the YouTube video?
7 years. 7 years, because after the book was criticized and trashed, and the psychiatrist said, this is the chemical imbalance of the brain, there's no discussion about it. I just wanted to understand the chemical imbalance. I was not trying to find something else, like the opposite. I thought, okay, so it might be interested to know how the chemical imbalance in the brain actually works, what chemicals are involved and other things. And so this is what I wanted to learn. And I started to read books and listen to lectures and study research papers. And I discovered that it's not so. And I was like so amazed. I could not believe my eyes. And so I decided to publish the revised version of my book, because I discovered that was the most amazing thing, that what I wrote in the book, based only on my experience, actually it can be proven scientifically. So I even wrote in the book that the point is not to numb yourself to be easier for everyone, for the doctors and for other people, because when you numb your emotions, you just drift away through your life, but nothing will change on its own. You have to take action, and you have to take conscious decisions, and you have to carry them out. So even that has been proven scientifically. I had no idea when I was writing that book 7 years ago, but now I know. So I decided to prepare a revised edition and include the scientific research that help me here.
Oh,
the scientific research
the umbrella
with
study.
backs. What's what I said in the book.
Yeah. Yeah. So you prepare this video for YouTube thinking that, you know, oh, you haven't heard anything in Poland about that. The chemical imbalance theory is, you know, proven.
Abolished.
Right. Thinking, oh, well, I'll just put this out, and you have, you know, how much of a following on your YouTube channel when you released it? Do you remember? Like,
So I was very naive, thinking that nobody's talking about the latest research in Poland because maybe they have no time, maybe they didn't come across this latest research. And I thought it was so important, because if even in official websites, it's in Poland, it says that depression is a very serious disease and it should be treated. And the best way is to use psychiatric drugs, antidepressants, and you should take them for at least 6 months, which is already long term. The longer you take them, which they don't say, the more difficult it may be to come off, and the side effects may be more serious. Nobody says that. So I thought, naively, maybe they don't know.
yeah.
So I said in the beginning of the video, so I came across this huge body of knowledge, and I hope this might be helpful to you. And I said it twice, in the beginning and in the end. And I also said, I'm not a doctor, not a scientist, just a journalist. And so I found those studies, and thinking that it may be a little shocking to people to find out that antidepressants are psychoactive substances and they do not cure depression. They just change the brain in a way that we cannot explain. So I decided to put on the screen the research I was referring to, and also under the video was a whole list of research papers I was referring to. So I thought I did a good job.
Yeah.
So I became public enemy #1 in Poland. Everybody attacked me. Everybody. Nobody took my side for the first few days. And
what kind of attacks? Can you tell us what was happening?
Okay. They were calling me all kinds of names. All newspapers and portals, websites were writing about the rubbish, the false information that I'm presenting, that I should never touch this subject, that I should stay away from it, that it's another stupid thing I'm doing. I got so many hateful comments, which were wishing me death and diseases and calling me all kinds of names. I was just overwhelmed. I just didn't know. I was afraid to go out because I thought somebody in the street may just attack me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't sleep for a week because I was so tense and I just couldn't understand what was happening. And so one well-known journalist wrote an article. I'm happy to watch the ocean of shit in which Beata Pawlikowska is drowning. That was the kind of attitude of mass media in Poland.
What is the, I guess, the sort of attitude in Poland around psychiatric medications? I mean, is it like very well embraced and people are very medicated, or what is it like there?
Oh, yes. I read the guidelines for GPs prepared by psychiatrists, and it says that medication is the best way. Also psychotherapy, medication with some psychotherapy. a medication for at least 6 months. And somebody told me that because some health services are free, and for some of them you have to pay. So the government is funding medication to be cheaper and more available to people, but it's not funding psychotherapy being available to people. So if you want to make an appointment with a psychotherapist, sometimes you have to wait a year.
Wow. Yeah.
And if you go to a GP or you go to a psychiatrist, you can get a prescription pretty easily. And I suppose this is similar, not only in Poland, but also other countries, that actually, because we are brought up to think that life should be easy and there should be a quick fix for everything. And we don't like to struggle. We don't like to, make an effort and change things in life. So I suppose many people prefer to take the pill without full informed consent, because the knowledge is still so new and the patients are not informed about the possible long-term side effects. And the official guidelines say that you can come off antidepressants quite easily within 2 to 4 weeks. Like, maybe if you take them for 2 weeks, you might be able to come off them during 2 weeks. But if you take them for 2 years or 20 years, it might be much more difficult.
Yeah. Your story reminds me of a TED Talk that I watched a long time ago, which is about a concept called willful blindness. And I actually interviewed the woman who did the TED Talk about that. And I'll send it to you when we hang up here, because I think you'll see the parallels between what the TED Talk was about and what you experienced telling this.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the day after you published the video, then a psychiatrist and president of the Polish Medical Media Association organized a public fundraiser to sue you for publicly publishing untrue information that poses a threat to the health and life of hundreds of thousands of people suffering from depression. And this is what he posted with the fundraiser. I'm a doctor, psychiatrist, CEO, and I'm honestly sick of celebrities talking about health, especially about mental health. On January 16th, 2023, on the YouTube channel of You, a journalist fluent in English published a video in which she gives false information that poses a threat to the health and life of hundreds of thousands of people suffering from depression. I've had enough. I need your help to raise funds and show all her possible successors that this type of content is over. It is time to start punishing.
Yeah.
So this fundraiser collected, I'm not familiar with Polish money. How much was it?
It was 30,000 zloty, I believe. It was like $8,000.
Wow. And then so you, in response to that, took your video down and you published a public apology. And I'm wondering, I'm just wondering if now you regret taking it down or apologizing, or, now that time has passed, how you feel about that.
Okay. I took it down, but I didn't delete it. I made it private.
Okay.
And I decided to publish the apology because everybody attacked me. Like, everybody attacked me. And I didn't have a single person that would say, hey, I'm with you. Like, I agree or disagree, but I'm with you. So I really was overwhelmed. And I thought, even though I know that I said the truth,
Mhm.
sometimes you cannot push the truth upon people.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot force someone to change their ways. So
Mhm.
maybe this is the wrong time and the wrong place. And maybe there will be a better time and place to talk about it. So I will keep on studying, and maybe there will be a better moment to be able to share this knowledge.
Yeah.
And so I published an apology, and I said that I regret doing that because I had no idea that it would create such an violent reaction.
Mhm.
And I said that I apologize to people who felt offended. And I said consciously using the words, I said, I do not intend to touch this subject again.
Mhm.
And a few days later, like 3 days later, because I was so lost without anyone
Mhm.
who would be my friend, that I decided to ask the higher power for guidance.
Mhm.
So I decided to let everything go. I said, all right, I don't have to prove that I'm right. This is not something to do at this moment. I just let everything go. And I said, God, please show me the way. Tell me what to do. I even considered moving out of Poland and changing life completely. I was even wondering what I might be doing, like maybe opening a fruit stand in Colombia, or I don't know, doing yoga in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
And so I let everything go. And I said, okay, whatever it is, it's the hardest time in my life. I don't know what to do. So please show me the way. And when I said that, a few hours later, I received a letter, an email from a lawyer
Mm.
who offered to defend me for free
Wow.
if this lawsuit happens. And I received an email from a psychologist from Krakow, who was the only scientist in Poland who took my side. And he said that what I actually said in this video is nothing new. It's true.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
and I was flooded with emails with support
Mhm.
from people that I don't know, but who were following me on my Facebook and YouTube and social media. And so I thought, all right,
Mm.
so I should go there. And so I decided to set up a foundation helping people with mental problems. And I want this foundation, I called it Knowledge and Hope, which in Polish stands for win, you know.
Yeah.
And so the knowledge and hope, because you have to have knowledge to have hope. Like with schizophrenia in Poland, I got so many emails from young girls, and they said, I'm crushed. I have just seen a psychiatrist, and he told me I have schizophrenia. I inherited from my mom. It's genetic, it's incurable. And for the rest of my life, I have to take medication. And I said, no, like this is ruining her life.
Mhm.
And nobody told her that 30% of people with schizophrenia just get better with time, that you can successfully treat schizophrenia with psychotherapy. This is why I found online Joan Greenberg,
Mhm.
who wrote the book I Never Promised You a Rose Garden, about how she was healed from schizophrenia with psychotherapy. So
Yeah.
so I felt there is so much need to talk about it, and I want to create a website. It's now under construction, but I want to publish information about antidepressants that people can read, just to be able to make a fully informed consent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not against people taking them because it's none of my business. I just think that it's fair to give people a complete set of information, both good and bad, and let them decide for themselves.
Yeah. I was going to say, when you felt so alone and nobody was behind you yet, it's just that those of us, the thousands and thousands who would have been behind you instantly, probably didn't know it was happening yet.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you found your tribe now. They're out there.
Yes.
They exist.
Thank you.
Saw that you wrote for Mad in America. So we'll post your writing. And so I guess, where does it stand now? Is the video live again? And what happened to the fundraiser and the threatening lawsuit? Have you heard any more? Yeah.
So I didn't know that there is a difference between a lawsuit and a criminal prosecution.
Mm-hmm.
So they threatened me with a criminal prosecution, not a lawsuit. It was a criminal prosecution, which is like something more serious.
Right.
And so, so when I got all the signs that this is the way to go, I changed the video from private to public, and it's been on since then. It had over 150,000 views. And people were saying after a few days, they were watching this video and they were writing in comments, what was all the shitstorm about? Like, I agree with this. Why did they attack her?
Yeah. So
the fundraiser was ended, and all the money was donated to a charity. They dropped the lawsuit or the threat of criminal prosecution because they have no grounds to sue me.
Yeah.
Important that a Polish Association of Journalists, after a few days, they also issued an official statement saying that that the video is a piece of reliable journalism, and people attacking me may have a freezing effect on other journalists who might want to talk about latest research on psychiatric drugs and depression.
Wow.
So they also helped me, but nobody mentioned that in the media. If you look in the media in Poland, the last thing about me is that I apologized. That's it.
So they didn't.
You will not find.
Right.
No,
they
nothing.
didn't correct. Nothing. They didn't right the ship, essentially.
No. So people think that the video is down. They think that I apologize and I dropped the subject, while on the contrary, I started the foundation, and I also started a series of podcasts with scientists. I recorded a conversation with Dr. Joanna Moncrief and with Dr. Mark Horowitz and with Joan Greenberg. Yay! I'm so happy about it.
Yeah. I'm so proud of you for doing that. I mean, most people, when it was hard like that and you were getting death threats and like you said, like, it would just be easier to just, that's what they want, is for you to be silenced, to be afraid to speak out. And the fact that you got your bearings and then people came forward. I mean, hooray for that attorney who stepped up for you. And the other, journalist organizations,
and the psychologist
too. Those are the real heroes, in this story. So
I also asked, when I wanted to make this podcast series to talk to scientists, and I invited some scientists from Poland to be a guest on my podcast. They said that they won't. So the only people who agreed to talk to me are Polish doctors living abroad. So I also made a conversation with a Polish psychiatrist living in Scotland. And I have another one with a Polish psychiatrist living in Michigan, because people in Poland would not talk to me because they think I should not do it.
Yeah, I understand. Well, good.
Luckily,
for people.
we have internet, and we can reach out to anyone in the whole world.
Yeah,
which is fantastic.
I hope you will continue doing your journalism on this topic and having guests. And we're going to put your YouTube channel in the comments and links to all your social media. And I know you have the book that you wrote. I came out of the powerlessness and depression. You can
no. The English title is Heal from Depression.
Oh, okay.
The Mind, Body, and Soul Solution, a Personal Journey. I have uploaded it on Amazon Kindle today, so it might be available soon.
Okay, send me the link and we'll make sure we get it in the description for anybody who wants to read it. And we'll link to the Hope and Knowledge Foundation website, which you said is still under construction, in case anybody wants to follow you there. And one last question, then where I'm just curious, did they donate the money that was originally meant to prosecute you? Was it a psychiatry foundation or something?
It's we call it a telephone of trust, which is a hotline for people in extreme emotional states. You can call and you know that you're anonymous and you can talk to someone on the other side and get some help.
Okay. So maybe not.
That's a good cause.
So bad. It's not, like here in the United States, if you call some of those 1-800 numbers, they will trace you and they'll send the police to your house in some instances. If you say you're suicidal, and then where you wind up if you, are taken to a psychiatric hospital or something like that. But
But actually, I don't know what happens if you call. Maybe I will call this hotline just to find out what happens.
Okay. All right. Well, keep us posted if you do that.
Thank you. Yeah, I will.
Yeah. All right. So it looks like we're close to time here. I want to give you a chance. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything you want to say to people? If there's any journalists in Poland who are listening to, do you have advice for them on touchy subjects or anything like that before we go?
I would not say that because they know what they know. And I think, you cannot change someone. They have to follow their own path and live their own truth.
Okay.
But what I want to say is that it's a great idea, especially in today's world where we have planes and trains and cars to go somewhere, and especially from people from our civilization, go somewhere where you will meet people from a different culture, like go to India, go to Colombia, go to Vietnam or Cambodia, and try not to judge and compare what you see to what you know from your own house, but have open eyes and an open heart and learn from them, because they are masters of their reality. And like I said, if whoever is going to survive a nuclear disaster or some other, if somebody takes away the electric power from us, we will be helpless. We will have not hot water and we'll be unhappy. And, so people from the so-called third countries, we should call them master countries or perfect countries or first countries or, million countries. because they have the real wisdom and they have the real knowledge, and they have a sense of community, they have a sense of security, they are connected to each other, they connected to the nature around, they connected to the higher power. And so they're just very simply, they're happy people.
Yeah.
We can learn so much from them.
Okay. Good advice, and advice that I will take, and hopefully others listening will too. So I've loved chatting with you. It's truly fascinating, some of the things that you've learned and shared. I could listen to your Amazon jungle stories probably for another, like I have so many questions, so we'll have to connect again.
Thank you, Nicole.
You'll keep in touch. Sure. So thanks everybody for watching and joining us today. If you haven't seen Medicating Normal yet and you want to, you can go to medicatingnormal.com/watch. As always, check our events tab on Facebook for more scheduled upcoming interviews like this one. And if you'd like to support the film's outreach efforts with a donation, you can do so at medicatingnormal.com/donate. Thanks again, everybody, for being here, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.